It's April 2022, and as with any show that's been out for a while, we've reflected on the past 4 years of this podcast, the lessons we've learned, the evolution, and what makes an episode popular. As such, we've decided to dedicate season 16 to the top 12 most downloaded episodes in no particular order here on the Business Infrastructure Podcast to date. And first up is Maria Jones. Maria's episode has more organic downloads on Equilibria's YouTube channel than any other episode so far. Let's take a trip down memory lane and find out why, shall we? This episode originally aired on April 5th, 2020. Let's start the show.
Welcome to Business Infrastructure, the podcast about curing back office blues of fast-growing businesses. If you're a business owner or operator looking for practical tips and solutions to scaling your business in a sustainable manner, you're in the right place. Now here's your hostess, Alicia Butler-Pierre.
Today's episode is brought to you by Equilibria Incorporated, an operations management firm giving fast-growing companies tools to increase their capacity with less chaos. Learn more at eqbsystems.com. This season, we're focusing on the COO, the Chief Operating Officer. And joining me today from Atlanta, Georgia, is Maria Jones. We're going to talk about what a COO is, why the role is so important, and some key metrics that can help you run your business better. Be sure to stick around to the end of the show because I'm going to tell you how you can ask me a question that you may have about operations and get it answered here live on the show. Maria, welcome. How are you today?
I'm fantastic. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
I am thrilled because you are quite the operations person, I must say. So I'm so excited about this for two reasons. One, because you actually own your business, but you have functioned as in some type of an operations capacity in several different industries. Your industry knowledge is very broad and very diverse, which I love. And secondly, because you're actually a director of the Atlanta chapter of the COO Forum. And we actually had Bill Shepard, who started the organization, on the show a few episodes back. And it's the perfect segue into starting off this season with you as one of the director of a chapter. We start off with you telling us first a little bit more about the COO Forum for those who may be hearing about it for the first time?
Absolutely. So the COO Forum is a peer-to-peer professional development experience. And what I mean by experience, it's really an experience whereby COOs can actually learn from one another. It goes back to the old adage of iron sharpens iron. And so with that, it's a good experience for others to really share knowledge, share new developments, and really have a confidential but a wealth of information to support the COO. And so what I always say about that experience is that there's only one COO at every company, right? The COO is not an accountant. They don't have another person at the company say, hey, what do you think about this? And so the COO Forum functions in that capacity and really aligns knowledge across the globe for all COOs.
Now, you also own your own company, which is Nerdy Industry. Can you tell more about that company and what you do there for your clients?
Sure. So I am the founder of Nerdy Industry. At Nerdy Industry, our focus is really to support the budding entrepreneur at any age. And so what I call my target market is the incidental entrepreneur. These are folks who have hobbies or cool talents and they have turned into businesses. And they're kind of in that initial period of, I really need to establish operations for my business, but I have no clue what this is. I just have this really great talent or thing that I make. A good example of a customer is one who Aunt Sally at church makes a really great pie. The word has gotten out and stores are like, oh, we need to order some pies. We want to sell that through a bakery. And so Aunt Sally is like, okay, they say I need contracts. They say I need an LLC or corp. They say I need an EIN. I don't know what to do. And so that's where Nerdy Industry comes into play. We actually work with budding entrepreneurs of all ages, actually have kidpreneurs as well, to set up their initial operations for their organization. And we work mostly through all industries. And not only do we kind of have a business advisory service, but we also service as a referral services for various needs for those entrepreneurs.
So it's almost as though, if this is a correct way of describing what you do, it's almost as though you're serving as a fractional COO for these budding entrepreneurs. Would that be a fair description?
That is a very accurate assessment.
Okay.
We are fractional COOs in that regard. And we're the first version of a COO that those companies actually see.
I like that. I like that. And first of all, I applaud you for being able to work with startups, because I've personally found it difficult, because when companies are first starting up, the focus tends to be on the marketing and sales side. And talking to these budding entrepreneurs, these startups, can be a challenge when you're talking to them about operations and getting all of that infrastructure in place. So do you find that to be a challenge? Is it a hard sell?
It's an interesting exchange of discussion initially about operations, to say the least, right? And so where I go with the conversation is, especially for budding entrepreneurs, my business started out kind of people just asking me questions. Oh, how do I do this and how do I do that? But the first point of them even working with Nerdy Industry is for them to understand where they're moving in their life with the business, right? Because it's one thing to do something as a hobby, and it's another thing to turn it into a business and what it means. And in order to have a business, you have to have operations. What I tell them and teach them is that operations is really the core of every business. It touches every part of your organization. It really births the product and or service, whatever they're providing to their customers. And if they don't have operations, then they don't have a product or service. And moreover, they don't have a business. And so that's kind of the very elementary discussion that we have. And it's good for them to understand that they do have an operation, but it's how do I scale that to the next level to make it a business?
Great point, which is a really nice segue into something else that I wanted to talk about, which is just explaining to people what operations actually means. I'm still boggled, honestly, by some people, even owners of well-established businesses, well-established meaning they've been in business at least 3 to 5 years.
Absolutely.
And they still don't really understand what's meant by operations and why it is so critical to have someone in place who's overlooking operations.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Can you talk to or speak to that for a little bit?
So, in my opinion, what I like to tell people is that operations is really the core. If I think of operations, it's really the piece that holds everything together. If you think of the physical human body, operations is the skin of that. You know, it's the thing that's most overlooked, but it's also one of the most important pieces of the body. It holds everything together. If it's damaged, it has to regenerate and heal itself. And so operations really is the core of the business, and every portion of the business is touched by operations. You spoke to marketing, but one of the things which I find also common, that CEOs are very focused on marketing, which is fantastic. I love marketing, but there is operational components as part of a marketing plan. And so I have to really describe to everyone that when you have a business, the operations is the how of what you do.
Yes.
It is the how of your marketing. It is the how of your accounting. It is the how of your product development. It is the how of your service. And so if that how isn't succinctly in place and managed, it affects everything about your business that is revenue generating. So the customer experience, what do they say? The product itself, the service itself.
Yes. And I have to just share a really quick story, Maria, with our audience that's listening. What I love about you, and I know we haven't known each other that long, but I was impressed with you from the first point of contact that I had with you. So for those of you listening, and depending on when you're listening, we are currently in the midst of the COVID-19, aka coronavirus outbreak. And Maria scheduled an initial kickoff kind of meet and greet event for the Atlanta chapter of the COO Forum. And I believe this was on March 12th, 2020.
Correct.
It was scheduled first thing in the morning so that we could all get our day started and be able to go back to our respective offices after the meet and greet. And although I think it was over 100 people that had signed up, there were 6 to 7 of us that actually showed up.
Absolutely, give or take.
Yes, and what was so interesting was that it was at that moment, from the moment that event ended, when I looked at my inbox, everything started getting canceled. All the meetings, all of the luncheons, all of the events, the workshops, the webinars, the conferences, speaking engagements, everything was just getting canceled. So I want to say kudos to you for putting that event together, because here's what I appreciated about what you did and how you set it up. I can always tell when someone is really good at processes and systems and operations and they can get into the details, when I have an amazing experience. Because I always tell people operations isn't necessarily seen, but it is experienced, right? Every little detail, everything from the intake form that you had us sign up. There, we also, I remember, had to choose different days of the week and preferred times of day that we could possibly meet as a group. It was just awesome. And then once you arrived at the event, it was just evident that you're very organized, very methodical, that you thought through every single detail to create a memorable experience. So that's what I appreciate about you. And for those who are listening, this is what operations is all about. It's all of those nitty-gritty details. But you've said a mouthful about why operations is so important. Can we talk about why it's so important to have someone in charge of operations in a business?
Fantastic. So for the COO role, it comes in many facets. It might have different names. You might have a chief strategy officer, but the key about the role is that the COO is the chief of operations, and they are second in command to the CEO. So this is where it ties to our previous conversation. The CEO is the visionary. The COO is what I always reference this. The COOs are really the innovators of execution. And so these are the people that take the how and they innovate. How are we going to manifest this vision? How are we going to continuously manifest this vision?
I know. It was just starting to get good, right? Well, there's more where that came from. To listen to the full interview, be sure to click the link in the description box below. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and click that notification bell so that you'll know when our next episode drops. Until then, keep operating smoothly. Do you have a question that you'd like for me to answer live on the show? Send me a direct message on LinkedIn, Twitter, or Instagram with your question, and I'll make sure that I get back to you with a response.
Join us next week for another episode of Business Infrastructure with Alicia Butler-Pierre.